All right, good evening, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here. Lots of friends, lots of colleagues, new friends, old friends. And as Amanda was saying, it was some time ago that we started. So I'll keep it very brief, but a little bit personal. 10 editions. So I didn't attend all 10 of them, but quite a number of them. 10 editions, 20 years of ENDO meetings. And as Amin Kassam was saying just in the other room over there, it started out with friends who dedicated themselves to endoscopy and were not going to form a society. That's great because societies have politics, but it's not so great because societies have money, and this organization needs some money sometimes. However, it survived. Every 2 years, COVID there, it took a bit longer, but other than that, every 2 years there was a meeting all over the world. Different continents, different cities, different people dedicated to organize this. I remember really well that Christos and I started doing endoscopy. I did a fellowship in Toronto, Canada, with Michael Cusimano, who was actually one of the first to do endoscopy for pituitary gland surgery. And at the time, I didn't realize that it was a novelty that we did pituitaries with an endoscope. When I came back to the Netherlands, we started doing some pituitaries with the microscope, and I asked Christos, are you dedicated to stay for some time? And he said, yeah, I'm here. And of course, he found his wife, so that wasn't unusual to stay. And we started the Endoscopic Skull Base Amsterdam group. Just like many of you, I guess, we went to the courses. We tried to learn, and we went to Pittsburgh, and we went to Bologna, the centers where they were already pioneering this type of surgery. We often went together. Sometimes it wasn't possible, and we learned. It was really impressive when we first went to the Milano Masterclass. I don't know if you remember that, but there was a time that there were Milano Masterclasses where the pioneers would come and would share their knowledge. We were invited. Well, it's not really invited. We had to push really hard to be allowed to come and give a presentation. And at the time, Christos and I were really good at working together. We worked together in the surgery. We worked together in the clinics. So we said, you know what, we'll do the presentation together. And that was like a new thing. We were there combined at the stage doing our presentation on our first results or something. It was a really good experience, and the pioneers were there, and I was quite impressed to meet them. Since then, we stayed on. We stayed doing these meetings. We got more involved, and the pioneers became friends. And it's impressive to see that we were now allowed to organize this meeting here with these pioneers. We are organizing it, but not alone. And there will be more recognition for that later on. But let me start out by saying that some of the people that were involved in the past years were really critical. Christos and I worked together for about 10 years, and then we separated our ways. He came here to Athens. I went to Leiden. We were doubling, what shall we do if we do the ENDO course? Do we do Leiden or Athens? And Athens somehow won. Perhaps the sun. We both formed our own teams, and the members of our teams were very important for the organization of this meeting. So just allow me to name a few of them. So that's Amanda. Thank you so much. She is truly the right person behind Christos. I don't know if you know Christos a little bit, but he needs a person behind him. Vasilis, who you already saw, Dimitrios, Achirio, and then, of course, from my team, Martin and Marco. Thank you so much. And from the company Vrij, the person who had to tolerate all our very chaotic organization talents, is Theo, who did a fantastic job, and we're here, and we had a great day, Theo. I don't know where you are, but thank you so much. Moving on, it's really a very big personal pleasure to be able to say that we will recognize two of those pioneers that I first met at the Milano Masterclass for their recognition for the field that they built right here. They were the crucial persons to start endoscopy, and without them, many of us would probably not have had a job like this. So the first person we will recognize is Professor Paolo Castelnuovo, and this will be done by Paolo Battaglia, who is a ENT surgeon who was trained by him and became his colleague. And after that, we will recognize Professor Ricardo Carrau, and that will be done by Danny Prevedello, who is a neurosurgeon who was training with him and became his colleague. So the floor is first to Paolo Battaglia.
So, ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends, when we think about pioneers of endoscopic surgery, we often imagine linear careers, rigorous academic pathways, and people who seem destined from the very beginning to become leaders. The story of Paolo Castelnuovo is exactly the opposite. And perhaps this is precisely why it became such an extraordinary story. There is a beautiful picture there of Professor Castelnuovo as a child. He already had the expression of all of us know so well: calm, warm, reassuring, and curious. The smile will later become one of his greatest strengths, because Professor Castelnuovo has always had a rare ability: making people feel immediately comfortable, making people feel part of something. As a medical student, however, he was far from the stereotypical young academic. Part of his life was in Bali. He imported furniture to survive, spent long periods abroad, returned to Italy to study just enough to pass exam, and then left again. But looking back now, we realize something very different. Those years already contained the essence of the man he would become: an explorer, someone unafraid of uncertainty, someone curious about the world, someone capable of adapting, connecting, surviving, and constantly moving. Eventually, however, curiosity alone was no longer enough. He understood that instinct alone was not enough, and that discipline would be equally necessary. And with remarkable determination, he recovered everything and graduated in medicine. Initially, he approached diabetology. Fortunately for all of us, he abandoned it and moved towards otorhinolaryngology. Thank you, Prof. He specialized and started working in Monza, where his early scientific work focused mainly in audiovestibology. The phase was extremely important because it refined his scientific rigor and research methodology. He still enjoys telling a story from those years. During his audiovestibology years, Professor Castelnuovo once forgot a patient in the rotation chair. To this day, we are not entirely sure whether the patient ever stopped spinning. I hope so. But then came another decision that perfectly represents his personality. He left a secure hospital position in Milan to become a technical researcher in the University of Pavia. He literally left the certainly for the uncertainty, not for prestige, not for money, but for research, teaching, and vision. And then came the turning point, endoscopy. At that time, modern endoscopy, sinonasal surgery, was still in its infancy. Castelnuovo traveled abroad to meet pioneers such like Heinz Amberger and Wolfgang Graf. He absorbed concepts, philosophy, and completely new vision of surgery. And this is the key point. He was not simply learning a technique. He was recognizing the future before people could even see it. At Pavia, he developed deep collaboration with radiology and studied TC and MR anatomy obsessively. At the same time, he started collaborating with neurosurgeons especially Professor Davide Locatelli, he never considered the boundaries between specialities as walls. He considered them places where learning could happen. Through collaboration with neurosurgeons, he learned skull-based reconstruction strategy and progressively expanded the possibility of endoscopic surgery. Those reconstruction concepts would later become fundamental in the treatment of sinonasal malignancies and anterior skull bed defects. At the same time, his academic career progressed from researcher to associate professor, and he started teaching at the Young University of Insubria. And even before moving to Varese, another important chapter had already started. The first MasterCard experience, all of you know about it, what made it special was not only the scientific level, but was the spirit. Surgeons from the United States, Europe, Asia, and many other countries came voluntarily, and often without compensation, simply to share ideas, innovation, and evolving techniques. It was not simply Congress, it was a community. Together with Professor Palma, and thanks to the collaboration of Université Libre de Bruxelles, Castelnuovo started organizing cadaver dissection courses in Brussels, and the time that was still difficult in Italy to do it. Those courses became much more than technical courses. They became meeting points. Italian rhinologists interested in endoscopic surgery gathered there after a year. International faculty progressively joined. Even Draft himself eventually came there. And gradually, he stopped being merely a student of an international movement. He became one of the people building that movement. One of the key factors behind Professor Castelnuovo is the extraordinary international success was undoubtedly been his impeccable, elegant, and unmistakable native level English.
Next surgery department at the University Hospital of Varese, Italy.
Thank you for teaching me the English. You perfectly managed the target. In the 2002, he had the opportunity to become director of a very small ENT department in Varese, very small. 4 beds, I remember it, operating room shared with the neurosurgery, limited resources. Nobody could imagine that this small department would eventually become one of the major international centers for endoscopic skull-based surgery, but Castelnuovo could. At the same time, another extraordinary collaboration developed with Professor Piero Nicolai from Brescia. Castelnuovo did the opposite of what many surgeons would have done. He shared cases, ideas, anatomy, complications, strategy, without jealousy. This scientific alliance between Varese and Brescia progressively generated one of the largest sinonasal tumor experiences in the world, a many landmark publication. At the same time, endoscopic surgery itself was evolving. Initially inflammatory disease, then benign tumors, then something many consider impossible, endoscopic treatment of sinonasal malignancies. This became possible thanks to skull-based reconstruction strategy, including multi-layer fascial lata technique, developed through the multidisciplinary collaboration. And importantly, it was never driven by surgical ego. Through collaboration with the College of the Milan Group, Lisitra, and now Esther Rollandin, important studies explore chemotherapy protocols, neoadjuvant strategies, and even the possibility of avoiding surgery in selected histology. Because for him, the central objective was never the operation itself, but it was the patient. And this mentality progressively expanded the horizontal of endoscopic surgery towards the orbit, towards the infratemporal fossa, towards the nasopharynx, the parapharyngeal space, the pituitary and the paracellular area. He did not build isolated experience, he built ecosystem. After years of traveling around the world to learn, Professor Castelnuovo eventually opened a dissection laboratory in Varese, and suddenly people start coming to him. Italian surgeons came to Varese to observe surgery, to study anatomy, to learn. And later came ENDO Milano. What made it special was not only the scientific level, it was the spirit. Surgeons from all around the world simply to share ideas, innovation, and evolving techniques. It was not simply a congress. It was, and it is, a community. And the same spirit is still alive today, here. ENDO Milano was never just a meeting. It was a group of friends connected by curiosity, collaboration, passion for exploration. It was not a society. And perhaps this word, exploration, best defines Professor Castelnuovo, because through his entire career, he kept moving scientifically, geographically, intellectually, humanly, always exploring next boundaries. Another remarkable example of Professor Castelnuovo's vision was the international diploma in Paris. Together with Professor Philippe Herman and Professor Nicolai, he created and structured an educational pathway that became a reference point for surgeons all over the world. Looking back, even his passions outside medicine seemed to reflect his personality. Castelnuovo practiced martial arts for many years, and perhaps that discipline, resilience, and ability to remain balanced under pressure became part of the surgeon and leader he would later become. He was also an extraordinary skier, and just like a motorcycle, he never seemed particularly interested in moderation. While most people carefully navigated their way down mountain, he often appeared to be racing it. There was always something adventurous in the way he approached challenges, something that constantly pushed him toward the next slope, the next road, the next idea. And then there were motorcycles. Over the years, motorcycles accidents forced him away from surgery more than once, sometimes for months. Most people would probably have slowed down after his first accident. Castelnuovo did not slow down after second, third, and somehow, even after retirement, he still managed to have another motorcycle accident. But in some way, this also perfectly reflects his personality. He always got back on the bike. And despite his almost impossible rhythm of light, flights, courses, live surgery from one country to another, Castelnuovo never became distant from people. Actually, the opposite happened. Castelnuovo's greatest talent was not only bringing people together scientifically, he was bringing people together humanly. Many surgeons built networks, he built friendship, and we all remember countless dinner, aperitifs, discussion after courses, endless evening during congresses. He never isolated himself inside formal academic role. He was convivial, accessible, and warm. And many of the greatest collaboration probably started not only inside the operating room, but around a dinner table. I personally experienced this very directly. I met Professor Castelnuovo when I was still a medical student. And what struck me immediately was not only the surgical brilliance, but the humanity. From the very first day, he welcomed me, introduced me to everyone, showed me the department, made me feel part of the learn. And honestly, I fell in love with this world. For 3 years, while I'm still a medical student, I practically lived like an NT resident. This was his real charisma, the ability to make young people believe they belong there. Not through fear, not through hierarchy, but through enthusiasm. And finally, behind of this, there is another dimension that I think is deeply important, the family dimension. Because despite the congresses, the flights, the endless travel, the surgery, and the responsibilities, Professor Castelnuovo always maintained something profoundly human. His relationship with his wife, Lorella, who has been not only his life companion, but also the constant presence that helped make him extraordinary journey possible. Thank you, Lorella. For supporting him and suffering. And his relationship with his children, Matteo, Chiara, Andrea, the weekends in countryside on Courmayeur, the ability to preserve affection and closeness despite of a life lived constantly in motion. Today, we celebrate a pioneer of endoscopic surgery, but I believe Professor Castelnuovo's greatest achievement is not only the technique he developed, the tumors he removed, the paper he published, or the international recognition he achieved. His greater achievement is the number of people he inspired, the school he created, the collaboration he generated, the friendship he built, the young surgeons he transformed into future leaders. Because in the end, the true measure of a master is not how he goes alone far. It is how many people he allows to go further because of him. So thank you, Professor Castelnuovo, for showing us, all of us, that the greatest legacy of a surgeon is not what he builds for himself, but what he builds for others. Thank you.
It is with great honor and great pride that I can offer you this plaque and recognition for your Lifetime Achievement Award for the ENDO world as we are here. Thank you so much for all your work and for your friendship.
Thank you so much. Only one word. Thank you. Of course, it's too emotional for me. It was a great talk, and the love I feel is a great thing. So I only want to remember the master I had that passed away, Heinz, Wolfgang, Frank, Giorgio, and Shabisher. They are still with us because we keep the enthusiasm from them, and we share. And this group of friends is magnificent. No president, no secretary, of course, who is in charge of the Congress organization has to risk a heart attack for the money. But this is very nice. So thank you to everybody.
Ricardinho. If Ricardo was born in Brazil, we'll definitely be playing soccer. It would be a Ricardinho. It's very interesting, the number of similarities that they share. Ricardo and Castelnuovo, it's amazing. And I was just watching there. I didn't know that Castelnuovo had martial arts as well under his belt, and Rick as well with the silats and the motorcycle. So we'll try to share a little bit of all the accomplishments and what Rick has done. And how do you move this thing here? Let's see. So, Rick really, in my mind, really was able to move the world, change the field. When I started neurosurgery, what we are seeing today, we didn't exist, basically. And it's amazing how one person and a group of friends can think out of the box and modify everything. So just to give you an idea, I put a little timeline because I noticed over the years people always asking Rick, Rick, but what did you do again? You went to the Air Force and then went back to Pittsburgh. And so this gives you an idea. So he started in Puerto Rico, and then I'm going to go in detail with this, but he then did medical school in Puerto Rico. He went to the Air Force, and then he went to Pittsburgh for fellowship, came back to the Air Force. So that's very interesting. And then that he went to Pittsburgh and so on, and I'll tell you in more detail here. So this is the way he started. So Rick started in Puerto Rico, and he was a gifted kid. And a lot of the things that I noticed talking to Rick, like his mom really always stimulating, like buying those scientific kits. And he had a microscope at a young age. And this is his dad there, he had a store in Puerto Rico, where none of those are, don't try to find Rick there, those are other kids. But this shows you the environment that Rick grew up, like with the kids around and his dad taking care of the community. And then, and his mom also like very involved with the community. And in one point, she actually was a candidate for mayor of Mayagüez, the city there in Puerto Rico. And that shows you like the environment that he grew up there. And here is difficult to see, but if you look, let's see if you can see my arrow. This one is Rick. And this one is Rick here, like at a young age over there in Puerto Rico. So then he did medical school. So he skipped a couple classes, like he was like a gifted kid. And in medical school, you're the youngest of all. So he basically entered medical school at the age of 18, very young. And this is, you can see here, that this is Rick there. And very interesting similarities with Paolo Castelnuovo. Like Rick also didn't go to ENT right away. He went to internal medicine. And then, thank God, like flipped and ended up doing a surgical field. So very young, and he was interesting telling me like he always felt the youngest of the class, the youngest of all, and now we're celebrating a moment where he's considering retiring, and is very interesting psychological moment. You know, you're the entire life you're the youngest, and so on. So then he went to the Air Force, and with these two times in his life. So first he went to Illinois, then he went to Pittsburgh for fellowship, and then he came back to Mississippi for the Air Force, that he got the scholarship to study medicine. And this is some of the pictures of Rick in the Air Force, and a lot of important things happened at that time. And then he went to Pittsburgh. So this is about when he became in Pittsburgh attending. This is 1992. Then he started his career as assistant professor in Pittsburgh. And I put this picture here, you know, the Jimmy, just to say, this is a little later picture, not from that time, but you can see here the Rick in the center there with Janica and Shaker and Don Nuss, who was his co-fellow. Was his co-fellow during the time of fellowship in the early days in Scobase. So here, this is very important. I think if you understand the progression of Rick's career, this is when he now is starting his career. He was doing a little bit of like a general neurosurgery, doing rhinology, doing fast surgery, but he was trained in Scobase. And I think this is very, very important. I think same with Ernesto, like, you know, early days with the endoscope in your hands, like I know I can do more than this. You know, for the young ones in the room, you may not know, but in the early days of fast functional endoscopic sinus surgery, there was this fear of going at the sphenoid. There was this fear, like, no, you shouldn't go to the sphenoid. There's no reason to go to the sphenoid. You may open a little bit there, don't go there. There's carotid, there's other stuff there. Right? It was like this. Those was they were teaching in the fast courses. And then, and this is what the challenge of the pioneers in this room, basically they did like, you know what, but there's a Scobase needs to be done. We need to help these people. We got to go beyond. And I think this is what happened to Rick, and then pushing the envelope and kind of growing in Scobase in the early days. So here's an early picture of Rick there with Lori and Dee Dee. His daughters that came during the time in Pittsburgh, and that is his uncle, like celebrating the birthday, 9 years old, right, Rick? 9 years old birth. By the way, all you guys gotta be ready to have Rick around for a long time. His entire family is like hundreds. You know, they all go there, like they all go there. So you gotta be prepared. So let me go back here. I think, yeah. So. The interesting thing, like Rick, very similar to Paolo, like always getting people to work together and forming teams. And his first experience, he started working with the Haydon Joe in Pittsburgh. And this is one of those early pictures there. And he's realized that, you know, the endoscope, we can go beyond and get to do Scobase properly. So in 1996, this is one of the most important papers that Rick wrote. That's basically the technique. This is the first time ever that the nasal cavity was used in the sinus to go directly to the sella. So it's not the first endoscopic cellar surgery, but it's the first that used the nasal passage, because there were a couple of other descriptions of going transethmoidal or through the septum before. So, but this was very important. And then just 1 year later, in 1997, they published the first 50 cases that they did together, Carrau and Joe. And so this is the idea that was to go straight to the sella. Rick, is this your own drawing? It is, confirmed, his own drawing. So this is, get to the sella. Thank God we got the better artist afterwards, because, you know, but you can see the carotids there, he did it pretty good. And this is the case report that they wrote. So with Joe, they wrote this case report. It's still in 1996. This is the first chordoma published ever done through the nose. So very impressive. If you look in that corner there, the picture of the mammillary bodies, probably the first time ever the mammillary bodies were seen through the transclavial approach. And this is back in 1996. And then it moved, like teams evolved, and with me and Carl, they built what the world got to call the Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh team, the Pittsburgh group. And it was an amazing team that really pushed the beyond the sella. Like it was the group with Bologna that were going through the cavernous sinus, with Ernesto and Giorgio at that time. They, with the idea to really face the world and go around the different approaches and really systematize, like having transplant on transtuberculum. It really kind of grew from the Pittsburgh team there, like with the three of them. And I'm just privileged to join them a few years later. And if you look in the picture, then Amin trained me and Paul in the picture there, and then you see Carl and Rick with the main light on his face there, as you can see there. And the other one is Jonathan Eng, which was part of the team as well. And I'll tell you, like here, just a quick pause, this team was really key to face the world. When I say face the world, it's because this was not accepted. I don't know, the young people here just come and this was really not accepted. That they were like situations in meetings that people would be screaming, like saying that this type of work should stop. And it was, you know, it wasn't for the three of them like push, and particularly me facing the crazy neurosurgeons, like we wouldn't be here. And this is the early pictures from Coulter, like from Pittsburgh, showing all these different approaches that came at that time. And one problem was still going on. When I joined the group in 2006, the problem was really CSF leak. CSF leak. We're still with a problem. Still a problem. Some patients were going back like several times to the OR. I always say this because I remember when I started in 2006 as Amin's fellow, and I remember that Amin was so like happy with the results that we were obtaining by taking these tumors, that now we have meta-analysis and we know that the vision outcome is better and these approaches. But at that time, we were trying to prove to the world that they are better. And we were seeing that they were better, but the CSF leak was still prohibitive. Had not, you know, Rick done something at that time, we probably wouldn't be here. And that was to listen to Haddad. Haddad, I'm not going to say names, but Haddad had shown his idea to some other ENTs around the world. And a lot of people, it's like, yeah, no, I don't think this is going to work. But Rick, like, no, wait a second, there's something here. So let's work in different possibilities, like different types of flaps that we can do. And they together then wrote that like paper that I believe is probably the most cited paper in skull base, at least nowadays. I'll show you the numbers in another slide. But, and I wish Haddad was here because, you know, his contribution with association with this team, with Rick and Basagastay, it was amazing. And this flap was really like what start looking at the statistics, stop the leaks. It became the workhorse. We do that all the time. And really was what allowed people to be more comfortable, say, you know what, now we're going to move forward. Up to this point, up to the flap, most of the places were still doing pituitary work. Even places that nowadays they do a lot of expanded approaches, there was a lot of fear at that point of just putting fat on the sphenoid and having patients with meningitis and all that. So this was really a moment where things changed. And then Rick got excited. Like, if one flap with the pedicle can work, let's do a bunch of them. So then I was part of the team here, and most of the publications on most different pedicle flaps came after this. Then we started having middle turbinate flap, inferior turbinate flap, lateral wall, temporal parietal flap. We and it had a little pedicle, we will create a flap. And some of these actually we use nowadays as well. Sometimes you have a nasoseptal flap that is not there because of cancer or is not there because it failed, and we use these other flaps all the time as well. So having these in your armamentarium is very, very important. It's really, I would say that the majority of these flaps, Rick's contribution to the field, particularly the lateral wall flap that can be pediculated anteriorly or posteriorly on the branches of the sphenopalatine artery there. So these are the numbers that I've mentioned to you. If you look at these, I thought about once I was at University of Virginia and they told me you're never going to write more than 5 papers that are really significant. You can write 500, but there are 5 that you, at the end of your career, you're going to look back at wow, these were really remarkable. And I would look at Rick's, and I would say that when he wrote with Carrau and Joe there, it's more than 1,000 citations. It's remarkable. And if you look at the 3 papers that Amin wrote as the first expanded approaches that came in 2005, if you look at those, they crossed 2,000 citations. And then the one with Haddad is really more than 2,000 citations. It's unbelievable. And then the first showing results and showing some of the difficulties with complications with the 800 patients with Amin is really around 800 citations as well. So very amazing. But then I want to bring your attention, because I would say that most of you don't know, is that Rick doesn't do just a scope base. He's really you go to his operating room, he's doing head and neck. I actually always go in the room and I ask because once I start, hey, Rick, talking to him, and the patient was awake. So then I always go into his room and say, hey, Rick, is patient awake? No, then I talk to him. So so he does a lot of head and neck, not anymore as much, but a long part of his career he did maxillofacial trauma, swallowing voice. He has books written for swallowing disorders, right, Rick? 2 or 3, maybe? 2? 5, mamma mia. Okay, 5. So he in Cial endoscopy, when we came to Ohio State, he was the only one, and he's been the only one doing Cial endoscopy at Ohio State as well. So very a man of many approaches and different specialties inside the specialty. So one thing that I want to also bring your attention, as a complete scope-based surgeon, and what I learned from Rick is really the balance. It's not because he does and is a master of endoscopic endonase, we're going to do everything endoscopically. Really, we spend most of our time doing open approaches. And I was talking to Diego today about people don't talk about us doing open approaches, but we spend half of the time in our careers doing what needs to be done for the patient. And that's what I learned from Rick. And is always what is more important for the patient. Quick pause in Rick's career. Spent a year in California, and this was the Son Jones and John Wayne Cancer Institute, and that was an interesting period where he, left Pittsburgh, went to California, and then after that, joined us. in 2011 at the Ohio State. And this picture there is from ENDO Chicago. And I tell you, like, we almost had a heart attack with this, Paolo. Like, it was not easy to have all your credit card like in line for if it goes downhill. In a society, it's so easy, right? You just say, yeah, just get from last year. You know, it's not the case here. But at Ohio State, we had a great time. We really been building together the skill-based center that basically was non-existent there. We built the laboratory, the courses that we've been doing, and having fun together as well there, as you can see. And really, like, it's we were just calculating, like, has been the last 16 years of Rick's career now, like, at Ohio State. And that you can see in the upper corner there, that's Kata's baby, little baby. It was right there. She's right here. She's laughing there. And these are included in black and white because the early pictures. And then we had the opportunity to be on TV together as well. Like, we were in Dr. Oz. For those that don't know, it was quite an experience. We went to the show in New York after, and Dr. Oz was in Ohio, like, recording. I discovered how dramatic this can be. This was something. Just a quick pause here. I was like, we were dissecting, opening the sphenoid. And Dr. Oz comes, like, on the camera, and he calls, camera on me. And he goes in camera, this is the carotid artery, can explode it at any moment. Yeah, it was quite an experience, how dramatic it can be. But we shared this together. And then had the privilege of traveling with Rick around the world, as most of you guys here have seen us around. And those are pictures there from India, from Thailand, Lithuania, England, and Kyiv, and several orders. And then people will come from all over. Like, for those that are not familiar with the Dos Equis commercial, Dos Equis commercial is about the most interesting man in the world. And they talk about how interesting this man is. And the commercial goes about, like, he usually doesn't swim, but when he swims, the dolphin comes around him. Yeah. So for Rick, it is like he doesn't always operate, but when he does, the surgeon comes from all over the world to watch him. And those are real pictures that I took with that thought in my mind. It's like, it's unbelievable. Look at the number of people that he was doing an orbital zygomatic on the superior one, and the older one that don't know. But it's quite remarkable. And I had to show the numbers as well, like incredible number of publications, always contributing, always, like, I want to make sure that we leave a legacy for the next generation. His age index, it's crazy. That's from Scopus. If you look at the Google Scholar, is more than 100 for Rick. I just look at maybe more today because I look at yesterday. Yeah. And then as Rick has been doing great, and people tend to follow great people, and he became the president of NASBS, did an MBA, has been my mentor for everything that I have doubt in what to do in life. I ask Rick first. It's amazing, and even for the MBA, he advised me to do the MBA. I followed his lead on that, and has been honored everywhere and always, like, thinking about doing great for the other and for our patients. But more important, there's a little, he's been, it's a great person, a great man, great husband, and I would like a round of applause to Cisa as well, that has been taking good care of Rick, and Thank you so much, Cisa, allowing Rick to be with us all here, around the world, and those moments of absence there, we know is not easy. It's really, really, really important. You're very important for him there. And then more, here's a picture, Rick with his brothers. There were four brothers with the family, marriage of his daughter there, with the son-in-law and the two grandchildren there. And in the middle, in the center there, Lori, Didi, and Kata when you're a baby. Unbelievable. And then more recently here, now she's 12. Is that correct, Kata? 12, is that right? Okay, perfect. And I had the privilege of enjoyed Rick outside of the OR and have fun with him. Similar to Paolo with the motorcycle, we go places there, like right in the middle, in the center of the screen. That's my daughter. That we were in two motorcycles with my daughter in the back, and we were going around Ohio there. And you can see here with Kyle Vancouver fishing, and we had the honor to, the fun to go to Michigan during the winter to ice fish. That was the first time I did. I think it was the first time for you as well, right, Rick? Ice fish and bringing this fish from the middle of the lake that is frozen and is something unique. And that's down in Costa Rica. And this picture down there with my wife in green there, that's Rick. And we were just walking in Athens here a couple of years ago. So I was kind of going around and around. And I'll tell you, the one in the center here, even in Kiev, where is our friend from Kiev? I think he was, is he here? We have some people from Kiev. Bravo. Thanks so much, for being here. Yeah. So I was going to say that a few people know, you get the impression that the war started recently, but when we were there in 2017 from that picture, it was already a war, in 2014, right? Am I right? Yeah. So people just not announced to the world, but, we've been around even in countries in war, and it's not... there's a lot of emotion there, visiting in Kyiv, the center of the city, with all those pictures, unbelievable. Anyways, but very amazing to share these moments of life with Rick over the years, and I think I wish I had what Battaglia did, put a picture of everyone that he trained, because that's exactly what was my conclusion here. You can have a technique that he described, or the safety net with the flaps, building a whole discipline, but what really counts is all the people that Rick trained, and all of you here, several of you trained and spent time in Ohio or in Pittsburgh before, where Rick touched. And we'll carry that forever, all the things that he does. Rick is like a guru. The word that I would say is a guru, a knowledge that he has, wisdom. You don't know about what should I do in surgery, you go to Rick. Kyle Vancouver, we were talking about this, what are we going to do without Rick? Because that's always okay, Rick knows what we should be doing. And then I start doing that in life, like I mentioned, I don't know what to do. Then I will go, Rick, what should I do? It's he's a guru. And so he basically didn't teach us just how to operate, but I'd say to choose, in life as well. So not only the approach, shall we do open endonezo? That's a basic thing. But it's really he opened my eyes for several things in life as well. He always says, hey, Danny, be careful with what you wish for. Because, sometimes you wish something, you don't know what the consequences can be. So with that, I would say thank you so much, Rick, for the curiosity, for the courage, and for the corridor that I would change for the avenue that you opened for all of us. Thank you so much.
Hand him over.
You want to do it?
Yes. Thank you very much for everything. Thank you.
Let me swallow hard here. Thank you for this great honor. It's incredible. It's also a very special occasion to share it with Paolo. We have been sharing this pathway for quite some time. As you heard, we share many things in common, so it's not just it's a great pleasure to be here with him today. So I'm going to go in kind of a centripetal type of way, expressing my gratitude to all the people that matters, the center of my world, my family, Sylvie, my wife, Katerina, my daughter, my past colleagues in Pittsburgh, Carol Snyderman, Amin Kassam, my present colleagues in Ohio State, Danny, thank you for the roast, and Kyle Van Couveren, and two that are not here, Kathleen Kelly and Kyle Wu. And then I have to thank, of course, Wouter and Christos for this great honor and the opportunity to be here with you today. And I have to thank all the group that we have been working together for 20 years, that we call ourselves the board of the ENDO city, but there's really not such a thing. We just get together, have some dinner, have some drinks, and then decide where we want to go next. And then I want to thank all of you for being here. You are the reason that we put these meetings together is to share the knowledge, to share some moments, because as you have heard before, it's not just about the professional exchange. It's actually about being with each other and exchanging some memories and working on making some more memories. Jem has preserved memories forever and ever. He's the master of the selfies and the pictures, and in futures to come, he will be able to show it. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for again sharing this moment with me, and I wish you the best in all your endeavors. Thank you.
Well, as we've seen today, we're joined by some true pioneers of endoscopic surgery, and bringing such minds together in a room in Athens is no small achievement. Much of the credit for this belongs to Professor Christos Georgalas, co-president of the Congress, a friend, a colleague, and a mentor, and I welcome him for his introduction.
Dear friends, dear colleagues, distinguished faculty, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Athens. Welcome to the 10th World Congress of Endoscopic Surgery of the Sinus, Skull Base, Brain, Spine and Orbit. Now, it's an extraordinary thing to stand here and say the word 10th, 10 congresses. A community that began as a handful of curious surgeons has become a family of thousands, spread across every continent on the earth. And tonight, the family is in this city. A city that has been thinking about the human body, about how to look at it, how to paint and understand it for rather a long time. Before I say anything else, I want to thank the people without whom none of us would be in this room. To Amanda, to Vasilis, to Argyro, to Dimitris, to Marco, to Martin, thank you. You have given months of your lives and a great deal of your patience to 1,000 small details that nobody would notice if you have done well, and everyone would be complaining about if you have done badly. They have been done beautifully. Thank you. Now, to my dear friend and co-president, Wouter van Furth, we will come back to you in a moment, because much of what I have to say tonight begins with you. And to the two men in this room who 20 years ago changed the direction of my professional life without even meaning, to Ricardo and Paolo. Let me take you back. When Wouter and I first started working together in 2007, we were inspired by a team down in Pittsburgh. So we did what young, hungry doctors do. They did then, they do it now. We traveled, and we went to learn. It feels strange to say this now loud. That was almost 20 years ago. I was 37. I'm now somewhere in my mid-50s, which I'm told is a fact and not an accusation. And what we found in Pittsburgh and in Varese looked to our eyes something close to magic. There were these surgeons, these shamans almost, doing through the nose what the rest of us have been taught could only be done through the face or the skull. They were preaching what was in effect a new religion, a new way of seeing. And like in every religion, in the beginning, it met resistance. There was skepticism, suspicion. There was outright hostility. People said it could not be done, it should not be done, it would not last. And then, as with every new religion that happens to be true, it spread. It became, if you like it, the official faith. It traveled to all 4 continents, from Italy to Algeria, from Singapore to Peru, from Canada to Iran. Tonight, there are more than 1,000 of us from 73 countries, which is, I think, the most convincing proof of it. By the time Wouter and I arrived, Paolo and Rick and Amin and Carl had already published the papers that became the foundations, the seminal work. They had established new techniques, yes, but more than techniques, they had established a new philosophy, because it was never about anatomy, although the love of anatomy was and continues to be at the heart of it. And here, let me say something to my Italian colleagues. In particular, what you brought in this field did not come from nowhere. It came down from centuries, from the great anatomical traditions of Bologna and of Padua, from Mondino Luzzi, which returned the human body to the dissecting table in the 14th century, and from Malpighi and from Valsalva, which we talk about every time in the operating theater and we don't think about the man. Morgani, who taught medicine to ask not only what is wrong, but where it is wrong. That is your inheritance, and you have honored it. But, and this is the point, it was never only about anatomy. It was never only about the techniques. It was, above all, a way of working together. We call it the 4 hands technique, right? But I always believe that 4 hands is a misnomer. It's a very bad description of what's happening, something much bigger. What is in reality a 2 brains technique. It's 2 people thinking together the same problem from 2 different trainings, 2 different ways of thinking, and refusing to solve it alone. It's a way of collaborating. At the end, it's a way of being a doctor. And I will tell you something that I have come to believe over 20 years. There is no accident that the centers which truly advanced this field were always the ones where the ENT and the neurosurgeon got on, not only professionally, but as human beings, where they trusted each other, where they liked each other, where beyond the operating theater they were friends. Because I think that the surgery follows the friendship. It's not the other way around. Which brings me to something that I have thought about a great deal, and I would feel it's at the heart of what I want to say about tonight. Medicine is a country, and medicine is a home. I found that home with Wouter in Pittsburgh, in Varese. I found it in Paolo's smile. Paolo, whose kindness always made me think that he's the very best grandfather a person could have. Understanding, quietly funny, humble, with an enormous, unembarrassed love of life. And I found it in Ohio, where I visited Rick, where I met his family, where I sat and listened to him tell story after story, because Rick is without question the finest storyteller I have ever met, and I have stopped trying to compete. And I found that home in workshops and dissection labs and congress dinners over 20 years all over the world. So many of you in this room, I first met this way, across a cadaveric dissection, over a cup of bad conference coffee, over a glass of rather better wine, and somewhere along the way, you stopped being colleagues and became friends. And I found the same home in a place where you would least expect to find anything resembling a home. In April and May of last year, 2025, I worked for 1 month as a volunteer in Nasser Hospital in Gaza. I went in the midst of a genocide. Children and babies were torn to pieces. I will not soften that because it should not be softened. I saw it with my eyes. And I worked alongside colleagues like Ahmed, who you will listen to tomorrow in this very Congress, people who have spent their whole lives inside what is in plain truth an open-air prison. People who have never once been permitted to leave Gaza and who, in spite of it all, stayed open to the whole world. They worked while being targeted. More than 1,600 healthcare workers have been killed. My colleagues knew that, and still, every single day, they were at their posts, with a smile, eager to learn, running their fellowship exams and their interviews under bombardment. Our own hospital, while I was there, was bombed twice during the 1 month. Now, let that sit for a moment. You have young doctors sitting their specialty exams with the building shaking around them because they refused to let the future be cancelled. I went to Gaza thinking I might be of some use. I came back having been taught about courage, about dignity, about what it truly means to be a doctor when everything that should protect you have been stripped away. So when I tell you that medicine, in its noblest form, is not a border, I'm not speaking in metaphors. Medicine is not a border, it's a bridge. It is a link, it is a home, and it is a country. And the passport is simply the wish to relieve suffering, whenever you see it. It's a way to be. It's a way to come closer to people and to understand them. And I learned them through endoscopy, through 20 years of meeting and arguing and eventually loving the doctors who became my friends, that through the slow, astonishing realization that medicine is the same, wherever on earth it is practiced. The same striving for excellence, the same restlessness, the same refusal to accept that's as good as it gets. The same wish, underneath everything, to do right for the patient in front of you. In Athens, in Ohio, in Varese, in Gaza, the same. Now, let me return to this room and the reason we are all here. We have, at this Congress, more than 1,000 participants for 73 countries. I want you to hear these numbers properly. In a world of wars, of closed borders, of forces pulling people apart from each other, 1,000 people, actually more than 1,000, from 73 nations chose to get on airplanes and travel to Athens to learn together. That's not a small thing. And this is the whole argument in flesh. Medicine brings people together. And so simply and sincerely, thank you. Thank you for coming. And I want to thank our faculty, whose presence is frankly one of the most redeeming facts about our whole profession. Think about it for a moment. In what other line of work do the most accomplished people in the field happily sacrifice their time, their energy, their money to fly across the world and hand over everything they know to people they have never met and most likely they will never meet again? We do that. Our profession does this. It's one of the things that makes me proudest to be a doctor. And together with my co-president, Wouter van Furth, and our scientific program committee, Paolo Battaglia, Vasilis Chatzinakis, Iakopo Dalan, Alkis Karligiotis, Martin Kluivert, Argyro Levedi, George Mireas, Amanda Ostra, Ansul Sama, Dimitris Terzakis, Mario Turuzanoni, Thibaut Vanzelle, and Marco Verstegen, we have built something that we are proud of, a program that reaches from one end of our field to the other, from nasopharyngectomy to rhinoplasty, from gliomas to biological factors, and from the deepest, most dangerous corners of the skull base to the finest details of the face. But above all others, there is one single group of people that I want to thank tonight, and that's the ENDO World Board. It's the small, stubborn group of people who sit at the very center of all of this. The ones who have been an inspiration and a compass for the rest of us. The ones who Congress after Congress, year after year, war after war, have kept the flame alight. By name and with all my gratitude. Issam Alobid, Ricardo Carrau, Paolo Castelnuovo, Jacopo Dalan, Chandrasekhar Deopujari, Philippe Herman, Amin Kassam, Diego Mazzatenda, Aldo Stam, Ernesto Pasquini, Narayan Parpagiran, Daniel Prevedello, Nishit Shah, and Manuel Bernal Sprekelsen. Everything you see in this hall, every name on the program, every surgeon, every friendship that will be made this week exists because these people refuse to let it die. Thank you from all of us. And let me end where I began. 10 congresses, a field that started as a few brave surgeons that were laughed at for attempting is now practiced on every continent. A community that crosses every border on the map, including the borders guarded by soldiers. We are anatomists. We are the heirs of Bologna and Padua. We are technicians in the proudest sense of the word. But more than any of this, we are a way of working together. Two brains coming together over an impossible problem. 4 hands that belong in the end to a single shared purpose. That purpose brought us through 20 years. It brought us to a 10th Congress. It brought more than 1,000 of us here tonight. And it's the same purpose that sends a surgeon back to his post the morning after the hospital was bombed to sit his trainer's exam because the future is worth defending, even then. So, let us be worthy of that this week. Let us learn from each other. Let us argue well and disagree generously and make the friendships that outlast the Congress. And let us remember, every time we look down an endoscope, what an extraordinary privilege this world actually is. And it is now my very great honor to declare the 10th World Congress, ENDOAthens, officially open. So, and now the work begins tomorrow, but tonight we eat. So join the faculty dinner at the Acropolis Museum in the shadow of the very building that taught the world what it means to build something to last. But, a Congress is not a full stop, it's a comma. And we are handing over to the next one, which I call upon now Professor Nishit Shah to come here and take over the flag from the ENDO board, because, as I said, we are only carrying the flag, we are only carrying the torch, and we're bringing it to the next one. So let's see the video. This is from us, the ENDO board, and yeah.
Okay, I'm going to let the video play in the background so you get a taste and feel of Goa. But first, I want to thank Christos and Wouter for giving me these few moments to speak to you. Also, I would like to thank the ENDO World Board for having their faith and trust and giving us an opportunity to host the 11th World Congress in India. As Paolo said, initially, heart attack. What have I got into? So I must say a special thank you to Amin, to Ricardo, to Prepagaran, and Dr. Devpujari, who could not be here, for giving us the strength and support not to collapse. And of course, it is not me, it is Team India. And we had Renuka, Narayan, Vikram, all of us at the time in ENDO-KL when we were given this. Many more of the Indian contingent here to support us, and also many back home. And we want to have a great Congress. And whether we like it or not, medicine makes strides at Mach 4 speed. And 2 years from now, we are going to be hearing things we don't know about today, we may not have thought about today, and it's going to be a very exciting new world. And we want every one of you to be here. We want all the world leaders to be here. But we also want the young generation who are going to be the new leaders. We are going to be excited to hear from you as well. And we want all of you to be here as well. And we want to do this in the ambience, in the lap of Goa. And Goa promises you, guarantees you to slow you down, to relax your heartbeat, to get your blood pressure down. It's an amazing place and you're going to love it. And for us to match the amazing ENDOAthens that Christos and Wouter have done, and big hand to them already, is not going to be easy, we know it. But we are going to work tirelessly, we are going to stand up, so that you have this unforgettable experience in Goa. So, welcome soon to Goa 2028. Thank you.